Welcome to episode 71 of the AMT podcast. Grateful to be joined by Pez this morning. How you doing, mate?
I'm well. Long time between drinks, but it's good to be back.
Yeah, you were sounding a bit rough this morning and we were going to postpone this, so I want to thank you for pushing through it and joining. You didn't have to.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I'm a construction guy. I can't really sack off on a Monday because I've got a little tickle in my throat, so I have to push through.
Yeah, we've caught up now and again, but I know your work's taken over, and we spoke about this in the last episode. But how have you been managing to balance work life with trading? Have you still been trading? And what's been going on in the meantime over the last few months?
Yeah, it has been a bit of a challenge just because I'm in construction, so I work pretty long hours, I'd say, but I've been managing to get a fair bit of trading done. It's winter right now where I am, so the cricket's not as heavy as probably in your end of the world. That being said, I've still found a way to trade. I think that MLC, I found a way to trade. There was an Afghan T20 series I managed to trade, and then it's rugby season over here, which is what I normally shift my focus to. And it's been interesting with work. I think I've been trading really well. I think I've been a little bit more disciplined, if anything, because when you go back to work and you you know how long it takes to earn X amount of dollars, you're probably a bit more careful with it, to be honest. I don't piss it up the wall as easily or take as big a risk when I know that it takes me another 50 hours to earn that sort of money back. So yeah, I think there's been a few pros, but it is what it is, I suppose.
Talking about the Afghan league, I think I know which one you're talking about. It's got a funny name, but I try and stay away from all these funny leagues. Is there any dodgy business that goes on there? Because I know there's a lot of fixing that goes on, especially in these South Asian leagues. So I've just stopped all of them altogether. I think I was trading one a few years ago now, and the game was so bent that Betfair just pulled the plug. They scrapped the whole tournament entirely. I think it was a Karnataka Premier League or something. I think I've spoken about this before, but I haven't watched any of this Afghanistan league. But I see it's fairly liquid. I've seen 500,000 getting matched on a few games. How's that been going?
Actually, really well. I don't actually think there was too much fixing. I think that all the guys out there wanted to win. You never know, but to be honest, it was a pretty simple tournament. Like 180 was getting chased almost every game. And there was one outlier or two outliers where a team got skittled for less than 120. Apart from that, it was just a road and quite a simple tournament to trade from. Well, that's my opinion of the tournament anyway.
Where's it getting played?
It's getting played in Afghanistan, in Kabul, and they had all the internationals back. So Rashid was back, and Mohammed Nabi, and Gurbaz, and all the guys were back. So it was actually some decent talent on show.
Oh, so they got some decent. So if they got international players in there, must be some quality.
Mm.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Well, we got the serious stuff coming up in a couple days' time, and that's what I want to talk about. The 100. So it's a shorter tournament than the IPL, much shorter. So we don't have as much time to bide our way. We can't really be as patient as we were in the IPL, where you have a lot of time to feel your way into the tournament. You almost got to hit the ground running when you've only got 20 or 30 games, in fact, over the course of the next month. But how are you feeling for the 100 coming up, and have you done any preparations, or what's sort of your approach going to be?
I have done some prep, but as is always with me, I do the minimum amount of prep. Maybe it's bad habits from school, maybe it's just the way I'm wired, but I like, I'll do the minimum prep. So I'll look up what the past scores have been at each of the grounds, and then just have a flick through and see, is it spin friendly? Is it a tough ground to bat on, like Lords or the Oval sometimes can be, and then that's about it. I just try and keep a few key facts in the back of my mind, but that's about it. I don't want, if I had to break it up percentage-wise, I'd say that 80% of my staking or my betting comes from, or 85% even comes from what's being played out in front of me using my eyes, and then I keep the other 15%, notes in the back of my head. And that's the way I think I've liked to operate. But yeah, I know you've done a fair bit of prep work. Is that the way that you like to do things?
Not exactly, actually. I think me and you are quite similar in that regard. We like to, I don't want to say wing it, but just have the minimal prep, just have a few numbers at the back of our mind, and just trust what we see with our eye. But having said that, for the last month, it's been a little bit of a dry patch in the group. I haven't advised many profitable trades. And I think that franchise cricket suits me a lot more because you got so many games, you can take your time, you can build a picture, you can spot patterns, whereas when you've got these tri-series and these and you've got these series where there's only 3 or 4 games, it's really hard to build a picture and build momentum. And knowing they didn't suit me, but there was no franchise cricket on, and test cricket's pretty slow, I kind of pressured myself into advising trades, which wasn't a good idea. So I'm really looking forward to heading back into franchise cricket. And I guess on the back of having a dry month, I've kind of forced myself to sort of be a bit more diligent with my preparations this time. So I don't want to say I've gone all out on data because, as you know, whenever you trade a long franchise, you run the risk of not trusting what you see in favor of the data. And I just hate trading like that because, like you said, you like to go by what you're seeing. And I prefer that as well. I think the data should just serve as a pointer. It shouldn't really dictate the positions you take. So when I say I've done homework, I've just looked at pretty much what you've looked at. I've sort of ranked the pitches in terms of which ones are going to be easiest to get runs, which are going to be low-scoring affairs that are going to suit the bowlers. And then from there, essentially just matching up the team's relative strengths and weaknesses to the pitches. And I think me and you, the reason why we have that good, we gel together quite well when we're advising trades is because we have, I don't want to say a bias, but a preference, so to speak, and that's backing the backing the batting teams. So I think that pitches like Leeds, Headingley at Leeds, and Trent Bridge and Nottingham, those are going to be the 2 pitches where we're sort of going to look to go big on the batting teams. And I think, again, that's just a pointer, just because the data points in that direction. There's not many low scores at Trent Bridge. I don't think there's ever been anything under 120, and almost 40% of the games there have had over 160 runs. You look at Headingley as well. I think in a third of the first innings there's been 180 or more, and 50% of the matches there have had over a dozen sixes. So those are the 2 pitches on the top of my priority list where we're going to look to get on batting teams. And yeah, hopefully everything falls in place.
Well, yeah, we both have a batting bias, and I mentioned in the group chat the other day that for me at least, it's probably because I grew up being a batsman. I was not much of a bowler. When I grew up playing, I was a bit of a batsman. But what's funny is that my ROI when I back a bowling team is significantly better than when I back a batting team. I might bet 60-65% batting teams, but my ROI is almost 1.5 times bigger when I'm backing a bowling side. And I think it's, for me at least, what I've come to realize is when I go against my own bias, I have to be damn sure of something. So normally when I go against it, I've made a pretty good decision, I'd like to think anyway.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I like spotting batters who are gelling together and they're finding they're just having it their way. And when it comes to getting on batting teams, the odds tend to creep in instead of just moving massively as they do when a wicket falls. It's kind of more satisfying in that way when you back the bowling team. But yeah, I just have a natural preference as well when it comes to backing batting teams, and that really lends itself well to 2020, where pitches are sort of geared towards runs. I mean, low scoring affairs aren't really going to generate views, so the IPL really lended itself well to us in that regard, and 2020 as a whole. So yeah, I think that's sort of a good edge for us. And like I said, the key to trading franchise cricket successfully is, like I said, just matching a team's strengths and weaknesses to the pitches. And just going back to the IPL, I think it took us around, I'd say, we aimed to hit the ground running after 10, 15 games. It ended up being more like 20, 25 games where, we really had to be patient. And it got to a point where I was wondering, all right, are we ever going to scale up? And then we really managed to get some patterns together. So, for example, Chennai was just totally inconsistent because their batting was so crap. But they had the likes of Noor Ahmed, they had Khalil Ahmed, I think, they had Ravi Ashwin, they had a lot of spinners. So they were really able to contain batting teams coming there, to short of 150 runs. It's just that they were just so crap at batting, they couldn't even chase it themselves. But then we had places like Gujarat, where the first innings average was head and shoulders above all the other pitches. I think their first innings average was around 220 runs, which is insane. So it was an absolute road. And when you couple that with the fact that their openers was Shubman Gill, Sai Sudarshan, and then Joss Butler, the three most destructive batters in the tournament, it was just really simple, just getting on them for a back to lay whenever they had a bat at home. And I think out the 15 points that we grinded out of the tournament, probably over 2 points was just off those 2-3 batters. And we'll be looking for similar angles, I think, when it comes to the 100. We're going to look for batting friendly pitches and just look to get on the batting teams. But like I said, you don't want to rely too heavily on the data. You do want to trust your eye, because we've made that mistake before. I think if you go back to the Big Bash, I always reference one game, and I think it was the Melbourne Renegades, wasn't it? Which pitch was it?
Stars. It was Stars versus Scorchers in Perth.
That's it, yeah. That drop-in pitch where there was low bounce, and we expected Melbourne to piss it in, and they got skittled because the pitch just, it just changed in the second innings, and we didn't pivot because we were expecting a road. So things like that happen. You expect to lose, but when you lose because you didn't trust your eye, I think that's more frustrating for traders like me and you, who go more off by what we see in play. But it's just about striking that delicate balance, and hopefully we do a good job of that this time round.
Absolutely, and I feel like for the IPL, we probably had a chance to take our time and really work through the gears, because that tournament's almost 80 games by the time you include finals. But here it's a lot faster. If you take 20 games to warm up, you've only got 10 games left. So I feel like there'll be a little bit more pressure on this one. But that being said, same as every other tournament, that first week, I just give myself first week grace. It's not about trying to make money. It's just about trying not to lose money and learning and taking as many notes as properly. And I think for this tournament in particular, it'll be, day 7, 8, 9, 10 is when I'll start to look to put the foot on the gas, so to speak, and really, ramp things up. But that first week, it's always the hardest, that first week, navigating it, because if you've not had a chance to trade a hell of a lot of cricket, you're stinging to get that bet on for that first game. And often you can go way too hard in that first week. I've done it myself in years gone by. So I think, I've learned by losing money that first week is take your time. Just take your time, because you can't make it a profitable tournament in that first week, but you can definitely make it, a lost tournament or a net even tournament by putting yourself in a hole that week 1. So week 1, just dial everything down. And then it's about learning, and then, I think after a week for this tournament, I think it's time to put the foot on the gas and really go forward with it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think historically, there's always going to be a handful of games. I think in the Big Bash, there was probably 2 or 3 stinkers where we got it completely wrong. We had that first game at Hobart where they got absolutely hammered, if you remember. And we had that Perth Scorchers Melbourne game that we just mentioned. And then in the IPL, there was a handful of stinkers as well. Not because we did anything wrong, but, it's just a product of variance. You're going to get teams that just don't show up on the day. Yeah, so there's going to be games where you expect to lose a point. You expect to lose a whole unit. But then there's going to be a handful of games where you make a couple of units or a unit and a half profit. So it sort of cancels out. And then that noise in between is where most of your profits are made. Those half unit games, those quarter units, those third units, those 0.1 units that just add up, and it's a slow process of accumulation across a tournament. At least that's how it's been for me over the last 2 tournaments that we've traded in the Discord group. And talking of data again, even though I've looked at the past teams over the last year in fact was the first time I traded the 100. But just looking at the teams from then and looking at them at now, it's kind of a little bit like the Big Bash in my opinion, in the sense that there's so much churn in the teams. So I'm just looking at like the Northern Superchargers who play at Headingley, and I'm thinking, they put up some good scores, but then a lot of it was Nicholas Puran, who they've lost. They've also lost Ben Dwarshuis, and who else is there? There's a few other teams with a lot of churn. I think it's Trent Rockets as well. So they've got rid of Rashid Khan. They've signed, I think they've signed George Lins, David Willey, Marcus Stoinis. So there's just going through these teams. I haven't exactly gone through all the new signings, but I made this mistake when I was looking at the Big Bash. I was looking at scores from 2024, and then I was looking at the teams on the day as we were trading day by day, and the players just went missing. So, I'm going to look to pivot as we start this tournament and just try and keep the data, I don't say minimal, but just as far as what past scores are, and then just build a picture from there. But do you feel like this 100? Do you think the 100? I know it's only a few overs less than a 20 over game, but I don't know how many times you've traded this tournament. But do you feel it trades that much differently from other franchises?
I don't think there's a massive difference, if I'm being honest. And that being said, this is only my second tournament for the 100, really having a crack. I mean, I've mucked around with it, dabbled with it when it first came out, but for all intensive purposes, I'd say this is my second time trading it. And it's interesting. I kind of like. I think there's a bit of a difference here with, when a bowler can bowl 10 balls straight, essentially 2 overs back to back. I actually kind of rate that, to be honest, because it brings a good bowler into play. Like, let's say, for example, Adil Rashid's got the squeeze on. He's got 3-4 dot balls in a row. You just bowl him out and let that pressure build. You don't get that pressure release of a new bowler down the other end. So I think that, when someone's bowling 10% of your total innings in one go, I think it sways things back to bowlers and a little bit more, which is why you don't see these massive scores in the 100 traditionally. It's probably more of an even contest, I'd say, between bat and ball compared to the Big Bash or the IPLs or even the Pakistan Super Leagues, which all tend to be, bat friendly. But yeah, the 100, it's an interesting one to trade, but I do think it does trade pretty much the same as a T20 in my eyes. Boundaries are going to move them quick. Six is going to move them even quicker. Wickets are going to have detrimental effects to the price. It's all the same, and I think the reality is if you can keep your emotions under control for the entire tournament, you should be able to come out profitably. And the point you made before, I just want to go back to it about there's going to be games where the middle, like the majority of your games, you're going to be looking to lock in 0.2s, 0.3s, 0.4s. That is really important. But I'd also say on top of that locking in the minus 0.2s, the minus 0.3s is almost equally important, if not more important, because they're the ones you can easily let, roll all the way out to a -1. I think, and personally for me, I know, picking a winner, it's easy when a team is winning. Like, if you pick a batting team and they're just teeing off, it's easy. You just, every couple of boundaries, drip your way out of the market, and it's an easy watch. I think what separates, the boys from the men, so to speak, is when things are going against you, and actually being able to say, look, maybe today's not the day to make money, and walking out of the 0.2 loss is just as good as a win. Because if you can keep those, negative 0.2s to 0.2s instead of -1s, I guarantee you can win money in this tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. Locking in, I didn't mention that, but that's a great point. Locking in the small losses as well, not undoing 3, 4, 5, or even 10 games worth of profit just off one game. So, yeah, you do have to let it go. And 2020, you don't have that much margin for error. You don't get that much time like you do in Test cricket, where you can really take your time thinking about a position and even exiting in spots anyway, at least early in a game. But you really can't make that. You really don't have the time to let things run against you in 2020. So you really got to be committed to your decisions when you enter trades. Speaking just quickly, again, from a technical standpoint, just back to the data, I'm not sure if you watched any of the Blast. Did you manage to trade any of it? I know the timings are horrible for you, being on the other side of the world, being on the arse end of the map.
I did manage to trade the Blast, but I think this year might be one of my last year's trading it, if I'm being honest, just because with the Blast, when there's 3 or 4 games on, for whatever reason, I just can't help myself. Like, I could just, if I was able to stick to the one game, and I'd do it very successfully, but there's one game, I'll have a green book in it, and I'll get bored and be like, oh, well, there's this game here, there's that game there, I might have a dabble at those. And then the one game that I took so long to get into and took all my notes and did it properly, I'll just erode in the next 20 minutes by trying to bet the next 3 games that are all on concurrently. Like, it's, yeah. In saying that, I did watch the Blast, and I do have a couple of notes from it, which I'll probably look to go back for.
That's what I was going to ask you. And on the point you made about trading 3-4 games, I do want to come back to that point. But just quickly, while we're on you trading the Blast, the notes you made, is there anything you take away from there, from any of the players or any of the pitches, that could provide some clues as to how the 100 is going to trade? Because the reason why I asked you is because I'm thinking, are any of these pitches, worn out or tired out from all the games that have happened at the Blast, and is that going to have a detrimental effect to the pitches in the tournament coming up?
I mean, you'd have to think so. Hey, like, I don't know the answer, but you'd have to think so. And then just forget the Blast. Even you've had, Lords, the Oval, all the big grounds have also had Test cricket on top of that, and fast bowlers hammering the pitch and leaving potholes in it for 5 days. So you'd have to think that the pitches would be a little bit tired. And I'm not sure. I don't think they use drop-ins over there. But yeah, I'd agree. You'd have to think some of the pitches are tired. And again, that's why I think we can come back to the fact that you don't see these massive scores. You don't see 200 getting broken all that often, or 180 getting scored all that often in the 100. I think 140 to 160 is generally a pretty good score. And like, I think it's a really good score, to be honest. And I've you can see 160 or 140 getting defended sometimes, whereas T20 140's equivalent would be 165. You'd like to think that the team chasing would piss it in, to be honest. So yeah, I do think that there'll be a factor there of tired pitches, and it won't be as bat friendly as the other tournaments that we're used to.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think, I've been looking at pitches like Old Trafford in Manchester, and where are we? They came sort of somewhere in the middle of runs being scored. They weren't at the lowest end, they weren't at the highest end. They were slap bang in the middle. The first innings average there, and I'm not including the rain shortened game, was around 137 runs last season, which apparently was higher than the season before. And then if you look at than the edition before in 2023. But then if you look at the Test match that was just played here, you saw it was just a run fest. It was pretty much a road. So that probably provides further evidence as to the fact that this pitch has flattened out. As for the other pitches, I didn't really watch much of the Blast. I only watched the odd game here and there, so I can't really testify to whether or not these pitches are wearing down. But speaking on trading 3 or 4 games at a time, I mean, or at face value, so it's a massive disadvantage, and it's a big reason why I don't like the tournament, because it really thins out the liquidity. And I like to concentrate on one game at a time. I'd rather go all out staking on one game, make a decent ROI, and then just switch off. But having said that, on the Blast, actually, the untelevised games, do you not find the prices are just so soft? So I kind of don't blame you for dabbling in one game after another or back to back, because some of the prices move so slowly, or they don't move consistently, or they overreact often. So I mean, even though I had a dry month in terms of advising trades to the group, I still had a reasonable profit last month, just picking off soft games where the prices just moved inconsistently or they overreacted. So the blast, in that sense, low key, can be good from a trading standpoint, if not from a viewership standpoint. So I think I'm going to give more attention to that. I think maybe for the next year, but yeah, for the most part, I just like locking in one game at a time and not focusing on anything else. And if you do that, generally speaking, you should be in good stead. It's better to trade one game properly than spreading yourself thin.
Absolutely.
The blast is an exception, though.
I mean, I don't know how many times I have to learn that lesson again, which is just trade one thing at a time and give your undivided attention. I've seen it. I've done it enough times now to know that, there's enough money to be, these are cricket markets. If I wanted to get $1 million down one day, I could do it easily. You only need to worry about one thing at a time. And, it's to be honest, something I probably struggle with in my personal life as well. I'm always trying to just fill my calendar so busy, so I'm doing so many things that often I think about in terms of actual productivity. If I just dialed everything back and just had one or two focuses, I'd probably get a lot more done. So, it is interesting, but that being said, I'm quite excited for the 100 to kick off. It's been a while for me since I've traded a franchise, since the end of the IPL, and this will be a good little tester, or just a nice one to sharpen the knife, so to speak, before we enter the summer of cricket down this way, and we can build some good habits in here that we can look to replicate by the time the Big Bash and the Women's Big Bash or the Super Smash or all the other tournaments kick off. So yeah, that's where my head's at. It's let's make a decent amount of profit here, but more than making profit, let's look to just keep sharpening that knife, becoming a sharper trader, and building on good habits that we've probably set during the Big Bash and the IPL. And because if you can continue to build and finish every tournament a better, not necessarily financially better off, but a better trader than you did the last tournament, I think that should be the goal.
No, I agree with you for sure. I mean, the last month for me at least has been dominated by Test cricket, not so much the blast. And I know the hours are horrible for you, but did you manage to watch any of the England-India series?
I did. I've had a dabble. Realistically, with the time zone, I can only watching till lunch is a bit of a stretch even. So I've had a dabble, and I've come away with. I'll end up, or even after this test, I'll come away with making profit in each of those 5 games. But that being said, they're small books, right? They're $100 books or $150 books. They're not like the same size I'm trading the T20s at. So it has been nice, but again, I don't want to go too heavy into the test stuff just because I don't want to leave money at risk while I'm asleep. And to be honest, it's probably a bit ill-disciplined on my behalf. And I've walked away, a bit lucky a couple of times. Example, overnight I left a bit of a stake on England, thinking when Root and Harry Brook were getting some runs together, and I thought, these guys look all right. I'll let it run overnight. So probably ill-disciplined in the long term, but it's something I need to tighten up, definitely.
Do you feel like there's a big adjustment to be made going from test and then, we've literally got no break after tomorrow. It's straight into the 100. Do you feel like there's any sort of adjustment to be made mentally or technically speaking, or are you happy to just jump straight into the 100 or 2020 after a test match?
Oh, that is such an interesting question, and something I have been pondering a lot about in my journal. And I know it's not cricket related per se, but right now, Southern Hemisphere, it's rugby season where I am. And rugby has actually been my main income winner, I suppose, on the trading front. And with rugby, it's not as high scoring game. There's less scoring opportunities, there's less movements. It's more of It's more of a bet and forget sort of situation. And even switching gears in my brain, let's say I watched a rugby game at night and then the next morning there was a West Indies versus Pakistan T20. I have found it a little bit hard switching gears mentally, being like, well, one, you could just set and forget and leave, and the other one you got to manage live in play. In saying that, I think I did well, but it does take a little bit of time, which is I think why personally tournaments like the IPL and the Big Bash I tend to go so well on, because that's the only thing that I have. It's there's a between those two tournaments there's 120 games where the only focus is cricket, and every day it's just wake up, same routine, same mental space, and you know what you're doing. Whereas even as you mentioned, switching between Test cricket and T20, I think it does take adjustment. To be honest, you got to be a lot faster. In Test cricket, you can think you want to get out of a position, but you probably realistically give yourself another over or two. T20, you sit on your hands for another over or two, everything could change completely. So I do think it is a little bit different, and it does take a little bit of adjustment. But again, we've got that first week grace to sort of work through those gears, work through those adjustments, and then after that, there's no Test cricket on. It's just about, getting stuck into it, and really putting the foot down on the accelerator.
Yeah, I think for me, for me, it's just cricket to cricket. So going from Test to 2020, I don't think it's that hard for me. I think the only difference is obviously my staking is way down on 2020. I go hard on Test cricket, and people can probably guess that seeing my books. The profits are a lot smaller on 2020, and I'm taking far less positions as well, but I'm looking to make far bigger moves. I'm looking to collect more ticks. So that's the only adjustment. The big adjustment for me is going from sport to sport. So going from cricket to a sport like racing, which obviously trades entirely different, needs a completely different temperament when it comes to in play. It's the fastest moving sport in play that you can trade. I would say greyhounds, but you can't trade greyhounds in play. So that's the only time I have to make that big mental shift. Otherwise, when Test cricket crosses over with 2020, that's when things get really hard to deal with. So like I said, you had the Blast on at the same time. And I think at the end of this year, I think the Big Bash, is that going to clash with the Ashes? I think it is, right?
It should clash. There'll be a handful of clashes, but I don't know. By then, I'm in my home summer of cricket, I suppose. So I'm dialed into cricket by then. It's probably the way you feel about your cricket right now, living on the other side of the world. This is your time to really, work through the gears and whatnot, and probably have a better understanding of those domestic guys that are playing. Whereas when it flips over to our side of the summer, it's, that transition for me between the Australian summer of cricket and New Zealand summer of cricket and the T20 formats is easy, because I'm dialed in by then. I'm so dialed in by then. Whereas right now it's a bit, I'm trading when I can. And it's not as consistent sort of thing. But that's, again, it comes back to what I was saying before, which is, obviously hope to make some money in this tournament, but fundamentally it's about becoming a better trader. Every single tournament, just becoming a better trader, and bit by bit building those blocks, and bit by bit also scaling up. So that's what I think it comes down to. And it's the main thing. How I'm going to judge this tournament for me personally is how good am I going to go at locking in my losses? Because as I said, earlier in the podcast, when I'm locking in a minus 0.2 and not letting it run out to a minus 0.5 or even a -1, that's when I know I'm dialed in. That's when I'm making money. Because I think we've talked about it in a previous episode as well, is like every now and then you're going to have a lean run, and in those times it's about surviving through it and not doing yourself in. It's about struggling through those struggle periods, because a good run is always around the corner. And if you go and blow your bankroll up in one of them weak, lean periods, then you're stuffed by the time the good period comes around. You can't bet the same stakes. You can't do anything. So it's just about, we talked about it, survival, and then taking big opportunities when they fall in front of you. And that's the way I'm going to judge my tournament and mark myself on trading, is how well can I survive when I need to survive, and then how well can I, go for the knockout when I've got another team on the ropes, and be ruthless. So yeah, I think that's what we should all be striving for, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you. You made a really good point about when it came to survival. If you want, in order to thrive, you got to survive first. And when it comes to locking the small losses, it's funny you brought that up, because just yesterday in the Discord channel, Mark, who's the who advises the tennis trades, he pretty much kicked off a whole conversation where everyone was chiming in on this, and we were talking about losses and how back in the day before he really had his break when it came to trading, if he had a loss, even if it was a small loss, he felt like he had to get back involved in the market just to make it back, and it would turn into rage trading. It would turn into a big loss, and then he'll go and win the next 2-3 games, only to end up back at even, whereas he'd be in profit had he just locked in that small loss. I think that's where a lot of traders make that mistake. It's not that they're not capable. It's just that they just don't know when to walk away and when to fold. And the hardest thing is when you fold and then you got to fold again, and you keep folding, and you've locked in a bunch of small winners, and then it's like a bowler who bowls, a 2-over spell where they keep the batter quiet, and then the batsman feels that pressure to play a shot and they do something stupid. It's the same in trading, where you feel that pressure. Like I felt the pressure in the last month where I had a dry patch and I wasn't giving out any good trades, and then I started giving out stupid trades because I just couldn't handle going through that quiet patch. But it's the same as trading. You fold once, and then before you know it, you've gone a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks without making a profitable trade. You start doubting yourself, and then that's when it's the easiest. That's when it's the easiest for you to just fall in that trap of placing a half-baked trade, over trading it, locking in a silly loss, and then before you know it, the next month you've gone on a heater, only to end up back at evens. And I've been down that road so many times now. And no matter how many times you go through a dry patch, it never gets easier. Even though you know what to do, the feeling is always the same. Now, like I said, we had a really good Big Bash. We had a good IPL. I don't think we had any dry runs on those two tournaments. Like I said, I had a dry run last month when there was no franchise cricket, but franchise cricket is just littered with opportunity, and there's so many patterns to spot. It's really hard to go, a string of games without, without making money. Touch wood. I don't want to jinx it, but I think that's something that it's not exclusive to any individual trader. It's the same battle for everyone. Just grinding out those dry patches, and those are the biggest tests. And like I said, it's just with experience, you know what to do and you know what not to do. It's just that temptation is always there. But yeah, I think going forward, for the 100, I'm with you on that. It's just going to be a case of not just locking in small wins, just avoiding any blow-ups. It's the same principle for every tournament that we trade. Avoiding blow-ups, locking in small wins, and just building patterns, looking to match up teams' tendencies with the pitch. So I've already pointed out the two pitches where I've got my eye on, where I'm going to be looking for good batting teams. The batting teams in particular I'm going to be looking at is the Trent Rockets and the Manchester Originals. I think they're going to do some serious damage this season. Joss Butler's back. He was not around last season due to injury. So Phil Salt, I think, was the captain. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But they've also signed Rachin Ravindra, Heinrich Klaasen, who I absolutely love. And I think they can really do some serious damage. I think Klaasen, if you remember in the IPL, I think he was a bit unlucky. I'm not sure what he's done since. I think he was in that American franchise. I don't know if you traded that. But when he was at Sunrisers, their top order was just so shocking. After those first few games, Travis Head, who else was it on top? I can't remember. But they just left Heinrich Klaasen, who bats at I think number 5. They left all the work to do to him. So he just had to play as an anchor. Hopefully this top order doesn't crumble in Butler and Salt, which they absolutely shouldn't. So Klaasen can really play his shots. So I'll be looking to back teams like Manchester Originals when they go to road pitches. And as far as the bowling, like I said, every bowling unit I've looked at, there's been so much churn. So we're just going to have to judge it on a daily basis. But principally, I think me and you are quite aligned in that regard. And hopefully we can lock in another profitable tournament.
Absolutely, I'm looking forward to it again. It's actually I love these franchise tournaments because I'm all in on the group chat. There's a bit of banter. There's a lot of like-minded people, and it's just a good place to be. It's I think these franchise tournaments, to be honest, is when the Discord group's at its best. Everyone's in, all eyes are on, and there's, the other benefit of it is you've got so many other eyes as well. If you might be seeing something that everyone else is not seeing, or vice versa. It might pull you out of a good or out of a bad situation, or put you into a good one as well. So, I love this Discord group, especially when it comes to franchise cricket, and I'm pretty keen to rip into it again.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. And we've got the same members that we've had from the Big Bash through the IPL till now. So they're quite sharp now themselves. They're quite clued up, and they're making their own contributions. And we've got other sharp traders giving their opinions and giving their breakdowns on games as well. So, but when it comes to franchise cricket, every day is just a new challenge, a new excitement, a new game. So it's going to be really fun trading 30 games across the next month. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I think we're going to have a good one and hopefully go out with another bang.
Absolutely. Let's hope for that, and maybe this time next week, after the first week of the tournament, we can have another little catch up and talk about our findings and talk about how we're going to look to put the accelerator down going forward.
For sure, yeah. I think after maybe a week or 10 games or whatever, we'll put up another review where we'll go over what we've done well, what we think is going to happen, what patterns we've built up, and hopefully have some more to chat about. But otherwise it's been good catching up. It's good to hear from you, and I'm really looking forward to cracking on. It's there's really no downtime. We've got day 5 tomorrow, the England-India test, which has suddenly got very interesting. And then after that, we've got 12 hours, and then we're straight into the 100. So busy month ahead. Time to lock in, and I'll see you in the group. But thanks for joining, Pez. I know you're not well. Your contribution's always welcome, and I guess I'll see you in the group.
Absolutely, and always thank you for having me on. Always enjoy these chats, and looking forward to locking in together for another franchise tournament.
Absolutely. Look forward to it, bud. Speak to you soon.
All right, mate. Thank you. Bye.